Okay, so get this right. Today's deep dive, we're talking international intrigue, but like on a whole other level.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into Frank Julius's thriller suspense novel, Information.
Catchy.
Right. But it's about how this fictional terrorist group, ISIF, basically holds America hostage.
And it's not just like a fictional story. This book drops you right into the minds of these characters, the government, everyone, as they deal with these insane attacks.
It's like a what would you do, but times 1,000.
Totally. You're thrown right into Crisis Management 101.
Exactly. So we're diving into chapters 29 through 33, where things get really interesting. So picture this, right? The U.S. is totally under siege by ISIF.
Under siege how?
We're talking train stations bombed, airports on lockdown, even a major oil refinery in Corpus Christi goes up in flames.
Oh, wow. This isn't just about causing chaos, though, is it? It feels very strategic.
You hit the nail on the head. Each attack, it's like it cripples the nation just a little bit more. The economy tanks, martial law is declared, Americans are fleeing to Canada.
It's that fear of the unknown, right? When you don't understand the enemy, you don't know how to fight back.
Exactly. And that's where it gets even more interesting. We meet Eldon and Kimberly Davis, an American couple.
Just a normal American couple caught up in this.
Well, they're hoteliers in Egypt, stuck there because of the attacks. But here's the kicker. Eldon, he's a former diplomat. And Kimberly, she was special ops.
Oh, wow. Talk about being a fly caught in a web.
And this web is spun by ISIF. They use, get this, Egyptian hieroglyphics to send messages to Kimberly.
Hieroglyphics. Like ancient Egypt stuff.
Yeah, embedded in the design of the hotel's King Tut menu.online. On their website.
Hold on. How does no one notice that?
That's the thing, right? It's hidden in plain sight. Completely missed by all the intelligence agencies.
It's kind of brilliant, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're so busy looking for the high-tech stuff, you overlook the ancients.
The novel does a great job of highlighting that even in our super connected world, those old school methods can be terrifyingly effective.
For sure. So we have a nation on edge, a terrorist group using ancient codes, and these two Americans caught in the middle. But what does ISIF actually want? Like, what's the end game?
So through Eldon, they issue this ultimatum to America.
Okay, I'm listening.
Number 1, the president resigns.
Wow. Okay, that's a big one right off the bat.
Right. Number 2, all U.S. troops pull out of the Middle East. And lastly, they want some heavy, heavy naval restrictions.
So basically, they want to completely cripple America on the world stage.
That's exactly it. And their reasoning.
What could justify this?
The 2003 invasion of Iraq. They're playing the long game, seeking retribution for what they believe was done to their people.
So revenge, but like global scale revenge.
Right. What I find fascinating is how the novel goes into the minds of Kimberly, Eldon, and even a former special ops friend, Billy, as they try to analyze ISIF's strategy.
They're trying to get inside the minds of these terrorists.
Exactly. And they uncover this chilling logic behind these attacks, right? The attacks seem random, chaotic, but they're not.
So it's not just about the attacks themselves. It's about the why, how they're choosing their targets.
And it suggests this is only the beginning. Meanwhile, back in the U.S.
Yeah, what's happening back home?
Well, the impact of these attacks is hitting hard. The country's on the brink. We're talking food shortages, social unrest.
It's like everything is unraveling.
Full-blown societal breakdown.
And amidst this chaos, we see a surprising shift.
Where?
The Oval Office. President Trenton, remember how he was initially paralyzed by all of this?
Mm-hmm.
He finds his footing.
Really? How so?
There's this powerful scene. He's surrounded by the portraits of all the past presidents, and it's like he draws strength from their legacy, their history.
You know, it's funny how a crisis can do that, right? Reveal a leader's true character.
For sure. But the question remains, right, even with this newfound resolve, can he stand against a force like ISIF?
Right, because we're talking about an enemy that operates in the shadows, that uses ancient codes to communicate, that has infiltrated the highest levels of government.
And that's where the novel takes us next. From the president's internal struggles to the global stage. We're talking high-stakes negotiations at the UN Security Council.
Because it's not just an American problem anymore. It's a global crisis.
The world is watching, holding its breath, fearing the collapse of the U.S.
And what about the U.S. cabinet? What are they doing in all of this?
They're stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. I mean, do you give in to ISIF's demands?
Which would be a huge blow, right, to America's standing in the world.
Exactly. Or do you risk total annihilation? It's lose-lose.
So what do they do?
Well, it's the Secretary of Defense, Andrews, who brings a new strategy to the table.
Which is?
Strategic retreat.
What do you mean?
He argues that sometimes retreating, regrouping, that's the path to eventual victory. He even draws parallels to historical battles like Hastings and Carhaix.
Interesting. So it's not about giving up. It's about living to fight another day.
Exactly. A calculated risk, but the stakes couldn't be higher.
Because if they get it wrong,
it's over. And that's what this part of the novel does so well. It shows the impossible decisions and the weight of responsibility these leaders carry.
And then, in a move no one sees coming, President Trenton, he agrees to Isif's demands.
What?
He agrees. He says he'll surrender himself in exchange for peace.
Wow. It's like he's putting the country before his own life. But is it a trap? A strategic move? Or is he just broken by the pressure?
The novel leaves you wondering, right, is this true selflessness or a desperate gamble?
And from there, things get even more complicated. Because with the president's decision, it shifts from global conflict to the very personal journeys of our main characters, Kimberly and Eldon.
What happens to them?
Well, they're given clearance to go back to the U.S., and they end up briefing intelligence officials about the whole hieroglyphic thing.
So they're basically handing over a map to Isif's entire communication network.
Potentially. But here's the thing. When Zara finds out they're heading back to the U.S., he freaks out.
He does.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, did he underestimate them? Did he just accidentally give them a weapon that he can't control?
Because if Eldon and Kimberly, with their backgrounds, can crack the code and figure out Isif's next move,
it could change everything. And that's where the novel leaves us hanging. Eldon, Kimberly, their pilot Billy, they're all under FBI surveillance in Florida, and their fates. Totally uncertain. You know, when I read this book, what really struck me was how morally ambiguous it all felt.
Oh, totally.
Like, you find yourself questioning everyone's motives. Are they good? Bad? You never really know.
There are no clear-cut heroes or villains.
Exactly. It's all gray areas.
Which I think makes it so much more realistic, you know?
Right. Because in a crisis like this, everyone's just trying to survive, make the least bad choice.
And sometimes those choices have devastating consequences.
Well, like take President Trenton's transformation, right?
Goes from being, frozen by fear to a hostage.
Right. It shows how leadership during a crisis is like walking a tightrope. One wrong step and it's over.
And it makes you think, what would I do in that situation? Could I make that call?
Exactly. It's those kinds of impossible situations that this book really nails.
And it's not just the president, right? I mean, you've got Kimberly and Eldon. They get thrown into this impossible situation, too.
Yeah, they really get put through the ringer, don't they?
Having to make choices with these unimaginable consequences.
And the weight of the world is on their shoulders.
The novel makes you feel that weight. And then you have the intelligence agencies.
Oh, yeah. Even they're wrestling with some heavy stuff.
Right. Because they have the means to go after Isif, but...
But every move risks hurting innocent people.
Exactly.
It's like they're trying to catch flies with honey.
Right. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. It's brutal.
The novel really makes you confront those questions. You know?
Yeah.
Like, how far is too far?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to national security.
And are we willing to sacrifice our values to protect them?
Yes. And can we even fight terrorism without becoming like them in the process?
Those are the questions that stick with you after reading.
Definitely. It's more than just a thriller. It's like this exploration of the human cost of conflict.
And it makes you realize that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones hiding in the shadows, but the ones we create ourselves.
100%. And I think the author's choice of setting just adds to that whole feeling, you know.
What do you mean?
Well, Egypt. I mean, talk about a country steeped in history. You got ancient secrets, modern tensions. It's like a character in itself.
And the symbolism is off the charts.
Right. It's not just a backdrop. It's reflecting all the anxieties of the modern world. Like those ancient pyramids have seen it all before.
And you can't forget how Isif uses those hieroglyphs. I mean, that's genius.
It's so smart. Using a forgotten language to communicate, it connects the crisis to, like, centuries of cultural clashes.
And it plays on our fascination with ancient mysteries.
It's like they're not just terrorists, they're these keepers of some ancient knowledge, using it to justify their actions.
And that's what makes it so terrifying, you know?
Okay.
Because it feels like they're tapping into something primal, something beyond our understanding.
It really gets under your skin. Which brings us to Zara.
The puppet master himself.
Right. But is he really just motivated by revenge? Or is there something more going on?
Because he's ruthless. This guy brings the U.S. to its knees in, what, a few weeks?
But throughout the novel, you pick up on these subtle things that make you think he's playing a much deeper game.
Like what?
He's obsessed with ancient Egypt. His strategies are ridiculously complex. There's even this theatrical flair to his attacks. It's almost like he sees himself as an artist or something.
Instead of just a terrorist leader.
Right. He's playing 4D chess while everyone else is stuck playing checkers.
And the stakes are life or death.
That's what makes him such a fascinating character. We see glimpses of his motivations, but we never really know his endgame.
Which, let's be honest, is what keeps us hooked.
Totally.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the novel doesn't shy away from the human cost of Zara's games.
What do you mean?
The victims. The author makes sure we see the horrific consequences of these attacks. Reminds us that behind every headline, there are real people whose lives are shattered.
It's easy to forget that when you get caught up in the political intrigue and the action.
Right. But those moments of human connection, they make the story all the more powerful.
And heartbreaking. So, we've talked about how complex these characters are, but is there anyone you found yourself rooting for?
It's tough because the novel does such a good job of showing the good and bad in everyone. Take Kimberly, for example. She's tough, capable, ex-special ops and all. But she's also thrown into this impossible situation.
Right. It's like she's constantly being pulled in different directions.
Right.
Duty, survival, trying to protect the people she cares about.
And the choices she has to make. They're often lose-lose. It really makes you think how you would react under that kind of pressure.
Would we crack? Would we rise to the occasion? Tough to say.
This book doesn't give you easy answers. It makes you work for it. It makes you question everything.
Which I appreciate. It's not just spoon-feeding you a story. It's making you confront some uncomfortable truths about power, fear, what it means to be human in the face of this kind of chaos.
And those are the themes that stay with you long after you finish reading, right?
Yes.
It's more than just a thriller. It's a commentary on the world we live in.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what's the one thing you hope our listener really takes away from our deep dive into Frank Julius's thriller suspense novel Information?
It's tough to pick just one, but I think it's the importance of thinking critically, engaging with the world, even when it's scary, even when it's complex.
Because burying your head in the sand, ignoring the problems, that doesn't make them go away.
Exactly. This novel is a reminder that we can't just be passive observers. We have to engage, ask questions, challenge the status quo.
Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a bomb, right? It's apathy. It's the erosion of trust and empathy. It's that breakdown of communication that can really destroy a society from within.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Frank Julius's thriller suspense novel Information reminds us that fighting terrorism, whether it's real or imagined, demands more than just brute force.
It requires awareness, a willingness to face some hard truths, and a commitment to defending the very values that make us human.
Well said.
Thanks for diving into this with me. It's always a wild ride.
In any time.